Thanksgiving week? None of oh, there they are. How many of you are awake? Some of you, good. How many of you had 2 Thanksgiving meals this week? Man. How many of you still have a Thanksgiving meal to have? Any of you? Nice. You know what I realize is it's kind of a tradition for whoever is hosting Thanksgiving to prepare the turkey, right? Is that how it works for most of you? Yes? No? I'm glad you're here. You guys, wake up. That's the tradition, right? Whoever hosts prepares the turkey. And I think it's because it's easier for whoever's hosting to prepare the big bird because it would be awkward to take it from place to place and do that kind of thing. But there are so many different ways that you can cook turkey, right? You can bake it, and I know when you bake it, there's probably 50 different theories on the correct way to bake a turkey just in this room. The right way, you got to do it. You stand it up. You cook it breast side down, breast side up. You baste it, whatever. There's so many different ways. And then you can smoke a turkey, which is an amazing way to cook a turkey. It's so good. And then if you really, really love people, you deep fry the turkey. It just gets so moist and delicious. It's so good, right? But I was thinking about, I'm talking about food, you're just going to have to deal with me for a minute. I was thinking about how when we come together, most of the time people just bring different dishes, right? Is that how it works? It's how it's always worked in my family. People just bring different dishes and it kind of makes a meal all go together. And I was thinking this week about some of my favorite foods, and one of my favorite Thanksgiving foods is mashed potatoes, right? Mashed potato fans, any of you? I saw this week the Pioneer woman, she made mashed potatoes, and like watching the show, I got fat just watching her make them. She used 10 pounds of potatoes, 1 pound of butter, 2 packages of cream cheese, and heavy cream. This sounds delicious. I mean, no matter which way you cut it, that sounds good. It's so fattening and horrible. And then, like, my second favorite food is macaroni and cheese. Macaroni and cheese, and I'm not talking, like, out of the blue box. I'm talking homemade mac and cheese, and it's so gooey and rich, and you just want to eat it all, and it makes you feel horrible afterwards. But did you know that you can actually say that macaroni and cheese is a vegetable dish? If you don't believe me, if you go to Cracker Barrel and you get the vegetable plate, you can choose macaroni and cheese. So it's forever going to be a vegetable dish to me. What about this? Pecan or pumpkin? Not pumpkin? Chocolate? I'm just down for both. I don't know about you, I'm down for both. And some of you might be thinking you made the wrong choice already. You know, I picked one and I didn't pick the other, and now I wish I would have done different. There's always next year. You might be able to make it right at Christmas time. But we come together, and sometimes people cook for 2 or 3 days. Like, they really get into the spirit, and they cook for 2 or 3 days, and they bring it all together, and it's so good. And what normally happens is when we get together, like if you've been doing this for a while and your family's done it for years and years and years, is what happens is you become like the selected mashed potato person. And like for the last 15 years, all you remember is every time you guys have a Thanksgiving meal, you are like the mashed potato person. And what that means is either people think your mashed potatoes are the best, or they're scared of everything else you cook. But we get together and we bring these things together, and it tastes really, really good, right? It makes everything together because everybody has brought something to the table. So we had plenty of leftovers this year. We had Thanksgiving yesterday at our house with Jennifer's family, or not her dad, just one of her brothers, and James. James is our family. And I have so many leftovers at my house that I'm not cooking all week. Like sometimes the best thing is like all those leftover sandwiches, and you can make like the weirdest combinations of food. But I started thinking about the church when I was thinking about this, and how every week when we come to church, we sit down at the table. Like we sit down at the table every week and we come together as a family and we sit here and we look to learn more from Jesus. We look to press in and hear his heart a little bit deeper, and we come together as a family. And each and every one of us here has different gifts. Each and every one of us here has something different that we can bring to the table. Brian Houston, he's the founder of Hillsong Church in Australia. He said this. He said, "A great church is not built on the talents of a few, but the sacrifices of many." And when you think about it, that is so true. It is so true, because we all give a little bit of something. And then next week, we're gonna go skating together, right? And some of the people in this room don't realize it, but that used to be a really big deal. Like roller rinks were like the thing that you'd go do and you'd hang out, and it was a really cool thing. Yeah, it was. It was cool. And some people hated it though, because you'd get there and they'd have that time and the guy would come on and he'd be like, "All right, now it's time for backwards skate." And some people would get so mad because they didn't know how to skate backwards and they just felt kind of left out. And then there was like always the rebel that would get out there and skate forward and be like, "Nobody's going to tell me what to do." And then there was the time that I always hated the most, which was like the couple skate. And I was like, I can just go hold my own hand and go skate. Is that okay? It's probably why I never had anybody to skate with, because I was so weird. But nobody liked that. But then there was the time when it would all be over and be like, "All right, it's time for all skate." Which meant that everybody could skate. There was no backwards or forwards, just everybody could go skate at the same time. And really, that's what church is. We're an all-skate church where everybody comes together and we all have our part. See, one of my favorite things when we get together as a family is I like to bring some fun to the table. I need 3 volunteers. 3, just 3. Not everybody jump up at once, because we won't move forward till they come up here. Adults are good. Teenagers are good. You can come up here. I've got 1. I'm going to sit down. 2 more. 2 more. 2. Oh, look, there we go. So I like to have fun. How many of you like Jelly Bellies? Jelly Bellies? Nobody likes jelly beans? So there's this really cool game. It's called Bean Boozled. And when you get together as a family, it's always really fun to play these games because you get to watch. Don't eat yet. Here, take one. And see, the way this game works is everybody gets a jelly bean. You can't smell it. I mean, you can smell it, but it doesn't smell like anything. So the way this works is once you take the jelly bean, you have to eat it or you lose. And these jelly beans either taste like chocolate pudding, which is a good jelly bean, or canned dog food. They look the same, and you don't know until you actually bite into it what you're going to get. And this is so fun to sit around the table and you just pass them out because they could all be canned dog food. They could all be chocolate. I have no way of telling. I just poured them out of the box. So now you get to watch. And this is what's fun to go. Go ahead, guys. Did anybody get pudding? No. I think I got beef tips and gravy. It would be so much easier if you could actually tell. I can't tell. I just got them all out. You guys can sit down now, unless you want to try again. Some of the other options on here. It smells like dog food right here. Wow. Some of the other options, you could either get Tutti Frutti or stinky socks, buttered popcorn or rotten egg, peach or barf, juicy pear or boogers, coconut or baby wipes, lime or lawn clippings, berry blue or toothpaste. Toothpaste isn't really that big of a deal. Chocolate pudding or canned dog food, caramel corn or moldy cheese, licorice or skunk spray. And that one is awful. Johnny Anderson ate one of those about a year ago. You could smell it outside. Like he ate it outside and you could smell it in there. It was rich. So when we come together, everybody brings something, right? I bring the fun and the sickness and make people try not to puke. But we all bring something to the table. And through my time in ministry, I've seen so many different people bring different things to the table. And I just want to kind of share with you some of the things that I've seen people bring to the table and what it's accomplished. In the first ministry position that I was at, I saw a man, he had a passion for kids, and he had a passion for basketball, and he brought that to the church. He said, this is what I want to bring to the table. He said, I love kids, I love basketball. We have this gym over here. You know what we could do is we could start an Upward basketball league. So that's what the church did, and Upward is an amazing opportunity to use Jesus through sports to reach your community. See, at halftime of every practice, everybody in the gym sits down and there's a devotional that talks about the gospel. At halftime of every single game, there's a devotional. So this had grown, and over 5 years, by the time I was there were over 300 kids in this basketball league. Now think about this for a second. These are kids that don't come to our church. Some of them did, but there's a whole ton of kids that didn't come to the church. Kids that didn't go to church anywhere. And it was an opportunity at every single practice for those kids to hear the gospel. And not only that, on Saturdays when their families would come, there would be over 1,600 people throughout the day that would be there in the church that were hearing about the gospel of Jesus. All because one man brought his passion for kids and basketball to the table. I saw a woman once at a church. She had a passion for feeding kids. She had spent her life as a lunch lady, and she had a passion for feeding kids. And she said, kids, they get hungry in the summer. Like when they have school, there's lunches every day, but there's nothing for them in the summer. So she had this idea. She said, let's feed kids during the summer. Well, what happened was it wasn't just kids that were coming. Their families started coming too. And what started out as the first week of feeding 5 people ended up feeding 70 people a week. And then she realized, hey, people are hungry during the winter too. So they kept this going, and after a while, it wasn't just feeding 70 families a week. They decided that, hey, people need groceries at home. People need hygiene products at home. So once a month, they were handing out bags of groceries and hygiene products to over 35 families. All because one lady brought her passion for kids and feeding them to the table. And it's something that I've seen here for the last 3 years that I've been here for Christmas and for Thanksgiving. I've seen us get all the food together and make sure that families can have a Thanksgiving meal. To see that families can have a Christmas meal together that they may not otherwise have. Last year I came before you guys and I said, listen, I have a friend, and he's been called by God to adopt a little girl who has the same disease that his kids have, which is PKU. And what it is where your body doesn't break down proteins, and some of you remember this. I said, hey, they want to adopt this little girl, and it's going to cost $30,000. And I saw us in a month's time raise over $2,000 to bring this little girl home. And then I had to get in front of you a month later and tell you that as she was waiting for all of the money to come through to be able to bring her home, that she passed away in the orphanage. And his family was heartbroken. His family was heartbroken because that was their daughter in their mind. Well, after they spent tons of time in prayer, they found another little boy in an orphanage that had the exact same disease. And they started trying to bring him home. And here's a picture of him. This is Kai. And since last year, in the last month, there's been so many amazing things that have happened. In the last month, they have finally received all the money they need for the adoption, which sounds awesome. But when you adopt from China, when you go to pick up your child, you have to give the orphanage a gift. And it has to be over $5,000. Doesn't sound like a gift, it sounds like a fee. But you have to give it to them when you pick them up. So right now, they're waiting to finish doing all that. And here's the amazing thing. In the last week, they sent in their paperwork that would assure them from China that they could bring him home, that would be able to put them on the list so they could get into the orphanage. And it takes at least 2 months to get that done. They sent the letter in and they heard back 2 days later that they had been approved. So now, in the next 3 weeks, if they can raise the money to get on the airplane, they are going to pick their son up. And it's all because people around the country, people just like us, have helped them when God gave them a passion to bring home this child, and they brought that to the table. The family came together and made that happen. I've seen you for the last 3 years come in on Saturdays, 2, 3 in a row, with plastic eggs in your hands, and candy everywhere, and tape everywhere, and sit around and talk. And so we packed these eggs full of candy. And at first it was 10,000 eggs, which is a lot. And last year I saw as we packed 18,000 eggs, and you guys sat together, and some of you believed in it so much that you took those eggs home and you packed them at home and you'd bring them back. And we saw over 700 people come to our egg hunt. And after it was over, if you walked around, you could see the family sitting out on the grass, opening those eggs and taking the candy out and sharing with one another, and you could see the joy and the happiness in their face. All because I brought this idea to the table, and the family came together and made it happen. I tell you these stories because the point is that every single person in this room, every single person with us today has something to bring to the table. Every one of you have something that God has given you that you can bring to the table, and you can say, hey, here's my contribution. And some of you, you've been doing that for years. So some of you, for years, you've been coming and you've been giving your tithe to the church. You've been saying, hey, I don't have anything else to give. I don't know what else I can do. But here's what God has called me to do. He's called me to support this church through my giving. And you've been faithful in that. Some of you bring ideas to the table. You say, hey, I think God wants us to do this. And some of you, you fight with the enemy on a daily basis. God has given you this passion. God has called you to do something, and the enemy keeps telling you, hey, that's not worth anything. That'll never work. You can't do that. There's no way you could ever make that happen on your own. There's no way that would ever reach anyone. You've believed those lies. I can't do that on my own. That's too big, God. I can't figure that out. There's no way that I could ever do that on my own. And the beauty of every single story that I told you is none of those stories happened by one person on their own. Every single one of those stories, everything that you heard about, everything that God did was because one person brought the idea and the passion to the table, and they led their family to make something happen. And God began to do something in that togetherness. God began to do something as all these people came together. God began to work. And you say, well, I don't know, Pastor. My idea is kind of crazy. I can't bring a crazy idea. It's too weird. Nobody's ever done that before. Listen, in all these situations, nobody had ever done that before. But God gave a person a passion. And God gave the person a family to make that happen. Even right now, some of you, you're arguing within yourself. You're saying, I know what you want me to do, God, but it's just never going to happen. God, I'm not strong enough. God, I'm not smart enough. God, I don't have enough experience. God, I can't do it. There's no way. And God says, that's why I put you in this family. Just like the Thanksgiving meal never happens alone. The things that we do for God rarely happen alone. Because we can't do life alone. God created us for community. God created us to be part of a family, to work together. What has God been calling you to do? What are the passions that He has built inside of you that you know without a doubt that God has birthed inside of you, and it burns so deep and you just don't have any idea how to make it happen? I guarantee you, if you bring that to the table, the family can come around you and support you and make God's kingdom grow. The question is this morning is, what do you have to bring to the table? What is it that has been burning inside of you for far too long, and you just say, you know what? I don't know what to do with it anymore. And what is it that God has put inside of you, and you've put it behind you for so long that the passion is starting to burn out because you have given up hope that you would ever be able to make a difference? Because God is calling. God is saying, hey, if you just follow me, if you just follow this passion, if you would just hear my voice, I will take you to all the places and help you to accomplish every goal. But it takes you bringing that to the table. And you might say, well, nobody's going to like it. Nobody will ever like what I have to bring. How do you know unless you bring it to the table? How will you ever know unless you bring it and you offer it for people to take hold of? Will you stand with me this morning? This morning, it's time to follow God in the passion that He's given you. In that moment, if you really are looking for what it might be, that one thing that you say, man, I wish the church would do this. I wish the church would do whatever that is. Chances are that is what God has given you a passion about. Chances are that is what God has called you to do. Chances are that is the heart that God has given you. If you want to see it fulfilled, you've got to bring it to the table. Let's pray this morning. Father, we thank you for today. Father, I thank you that you give each and every one of us passions, that you give each and every one of us desires, that you've called each and every one of us to something different. Father, this morning I pray that you would move upon hearts, that you would build strength, that you would build courage, that you would build wisdom, and whatever that gifting, whatever that passion that you've given us, Father, that you would build passion into that inside of us, Father, that we'd bring it to the table, and you let our family help us to serve that meal together. Some of you this morning, you might be with us and you might not have any idea what that is. You've given up on it so long ago that you've put a quiet on God's voice and what He's called you to, and you've just allowed it to die inside of you. If that's you this morning and you don't know what it is, I'm going to invite you to come to the altar and bow your knees and allow God to speak to your heart. Allow Him to reach deep inside of you this morning and be willing to listen no matter how crazy it might seem. Father, move upon our hearts. Jesus, touch us this morning. Move us to action, Father. Jesus, this morning we just declare our love for you. It's in the mighty, matchless name of Jesus we pray. Amen. Come as the Lord calls you this